On this Tuesday night, food inflation and deflating discounts on expiring items.
It's not fair.
Fresh criticism for Canada's biggest grocer and the calls for an investigation.
If it's not collusion, I don't know what that is.
New revelations about the Saskatchewan stabbing rampage, what the victims' families just learned. From political victory in Iowa to legal trouble in New York. What's next for Donald Trump? And cooking up success. A Canadian chef turned actor's journey from rock bottom to the Emmy Awards.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with news about inflation, what it's doing to your cost of living, plus what it could mean for interest rates. Canada's annual inflation rate accelerated 3.4% in December, a bit faster than the 3.1% rise in November. It's largely driven by the price of gas, which didn't drop as quickly as it did in December of 2022. As well, airfare, vehicles, and rent drove inflation higher last month. It's a big improvement on where we were a year ago, but with inflation sticking around, interest rates are likely to stick too. More on that in just a moment. But we begin with what it means for putting food on your table and why one big grocery store chain is reducing its popular deep discount. Abigail Beeman has our top story tonight.
As a single mom of two young kids, it's kind of horrible and horrific.
Strong opinions from shoppers about Loblaw's latest move to shrink discounts on expiring foods. Where some stores offered 50% off, now it's only 30%.
It's not fair because if they throw it away, they might as well give a discount.
Would you buy it if it's 30%?
No, I will not. Yeah.
Any reason?
Just expensive.
The number one grocer in our country has missed a clear opportunity to read the room.
Sylvain Charlebois says Loblaw told his research lab the move was made to match competitors. He calls that disturbing.
If it's not collusion, I don't know what that is.
Now, there's still a chance to get this 30% off salad for 50% off, and that's through an app called Flash Food. The catch is you can't see the food before you buy it. So let's take a look at what we found. We got that salad for 50% off. This spring mix, well, it's a little slimier than I would have liked, and I don't think I would have picked that up if I had been in the store to try it first. It was $1.99. And then we have this mixed box of produce. All of this for $5. Let's see. Oh, I think that's a mango with some serious bruising on it. Otherwise, a lot of food in here for $5. The whole purchase was $10.48, but we didn't get to check it out in store first.
I did download the app, and it's a thought. It's a definite thought.
The Liberal government has long promised to hold big grocers to account.
The idea that you would simply ask politely and have the grocery chains that are engaged heavily in food price gouging and profiting enormously, that is simply wrong-headed.
New Democrats want the Competition Bureau to investigate. The agency tells Global News it's aware of the discount change, but can't say if it's doing anything about it. The industry minister's office says new inflation numbers show food prices are stabilizing. They were 4.7% higher year over year. That's the same as the month before.
I mean, it just feels like another manifestation of corporate greed, which is increasing food insecurity on campus. Our food bank has seen a 250% increase in users.
For its part, Loblaw has ignored 4 requests for comment from Global News. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Well, it's too early to declare victory on inflation in Canada, and if you were hoping for a quick drop in interest rates, you're likely going to have to wait. Our senior business correspondent Anne Gaviola is here with some analysis. Anne.
The central bank is widely expected to hold its benchmark interest rate steady at 5% at its next announcement on January 24th. Beyond that, economists are divided. Some say we could see interest rate cuts this spring. Others say we'll have to wait until summer. And all of that depends on whether the economy remains weak. Add to this a series of geopolitical crises that have stoked inflation, the war in Ukraine, and escalating conflicts that have added to shipping costs of vessels rerouting around the Red Sea. According to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, supply chain risks and disruptions have caused companies to prioritize security over efficiency. They're keeping more inventory on shelves to guard against shortages, and this creates structural inflation, meaning we may have to get used to inflation that's higher than what we're used to. Think of it as the new normal. The central bank's quest to tame inflation has been likened to a long race where the last kilometer is the toughest. Donna?
All right, Anne Gaviola in Toronto, thank you. It is the end of a political era in Alberta. Former Premier Rachel Notley, who has led the NDP in Alberta since 2014 and formed the first New Democrat government in that province's history, says she is stepping down.
If there is any one accomplishment that I can leave behind me, it's that we are not a one-party province where Albertans have no real choice about how their province is to be run. Albertans do not ever have to feel that elections and their opinions do not matter. It was that way when I started. It's not that way anymore.
Notley made history in May 2015 when she led the NDP to victory, ending more than 4 decades of progressive Conservative rule in Alberta. She was Premier until 2019 when the United Conservative Party won and she became leader of the opposition. Notley will stay on as party leader until a successor is chosen. In Saskatchewan, the coroner's inquest into the massacre at James Smith Cree Nation and the village of Weldon heard detailed accounts of the terrible events. RCMP released new details of what unfolded in the early morning hours of September 4th, 2022, the suspect attacking many of the victims as they woke up. Heather Yourex-West reports in a warning some of the details in her story are upsetting.
A grandfather who died protecting his grandson, a mother who survived an initial attack, murdered while tending to her dying son. On the second day of a coroner's inquest into the mass killings on the James Smith Cree Nation and Weldon, Saskatchewan, family members heard new and heartbreaking details about how their loved ones died. Brian "Buggy" Burns lost his wife and son in the attacks.
It was very hard, especially for my son. He's 15 and he was part of the attacks too. He got stabbed right here. So yeah, he's having a tough time today.
The RCMP once again confirming what Global News first reported last year, that Myles Sanderson, originally reported by police as a suspect in the mass killings, had in fact been Myles Sanderson's first victim. He would go on to kill 10 more people, injuring 17 others. He also threatened to kill his own teenage son, the young life saved by Earl Burns, Myles Sanderson's father-in-law. RCMP also presented a timeline of the days leading up to the mass killings, telling the inquest that community members knew Myles Sanderson was in and around the James Smith Cree Nation, engaging in illegal activities and wanted by police.
Maybe some of his family and friends knew that he was there, I can believe that, but leadership, we're not aware of that.
Community leaders say they had no idea that Myles Sanderson, a man with a long and violent criminal history, had been released from prison on parole. Their lawyer says that's because there's no duty to inform leadership, which they hope this inquest will change.
First Nations, Indigenous groups are really not treated as equal partners in the justice system as other governments when it comes to corrections and justice for their own members.
The Parole Board of Canada is expected to defend its decision to release Myles Sanderson before his sentence was complete in the coming days. A separate inquest into Sanderson's death, which occurred in police custody, will take place next month. Donna?
All right, Heather Yourex-West in Melfort, Saskatchewan tonight. Thanks, Heather. British Columbians are being warned to plan ahead and stay off the roads as another round of winter weather is forecast for the southern half of that province overnight. Snowfall and winter storm warnings stretch from BC's south coast to the Alberta border and north to Prince George. As much as 30 centimeters of snow is expected, and freezing rain could be a factor in parts of Greater Vancouver and Vancouver Island. Further east, northern Alberta and parts of Saskatchewan are still under extreme cold warnings, and a patchwork of winter storm, snow squalls and wind warnings are in place for southern Ontario and Atlantic Canada. It is winter in New York, Philadelphia and Washington. Those cities got the first significant snowfall in nearly 2 years. An Arctic blast is covering large swaths of the U.S. In the south, more than 500,000 children were told to stay home today as frigid temperatures stretched well into Texas, Alabama, and parts of the Florida Panhandle. Ice is the main concern in the Pacific Northwest, where tens of thousands of people are still without power after a weekend storm. At least 7 weather-related deaths have been reported in the U.S., and more than 3,000 flights have been canceled. Republican voters braved the cold and the snow last night to cast their ballots in the Iowa caucuses. And as was widely predicted, former President Donald Trump won in a landslide. Trump won 50% of the vote. That's well ahead of his closest Republican challengers, who were more than 30 points behind. Trump has the momentum heading into the New Hampshire primary next week. As Jackson Proskow explains, the only question now is whether anyone can catch up.
Never before has a candidate won Iowa by such a wide margin. Donald Trump made history without breaking a sweat.
I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together.
Though turnout was down sharply, Trump's grip on Iowa Republicans was never really in question.
He's not a swamp creature like our previous presidents.
We're just going through the motions, and that President Trump is the nominee.
His closest rivals, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, effectively tied for a very distant second place. They'll push on to the New Hampshire primary anyway, in hopes they might somehow pull off the impossible.
We represent a chance to reverse the madness that we've seen in this country.
Our campaign is the last best hope of stopping the Trump-Biden nightmare.
There may not be much of a fight left. Trump's legal troubles, including 91 criminal charges and a civil suit, have only improved his standing with Republicans. He was back in court for a defamation trial straight from Iowa.
That really reads into the narrative that he's out there taking the shots for you. And these primary voters believe that. The question is, will general election voters believe it?
Afraid of turning off Republicans, DeSantis and Haley have positioned themselves as Trump without the drama, running against a man whose policies they largely support, vowing to support him if he wins the nomination.
Why would you go for an alternative to me when you can have the real thing?
It all portends a 2024 election that feels a lot like 2020. Trump versus Joe Biden, a historic matchup between two incumbent candidates. Next week's New Hampshire primary will be a far bigger test of Trump's grip on the party. Nikki Haley has focused much of her campaigning in that state, where the primary captures a far broader segment of Republicans than the Iowa caucuses. Donna?
Okay, Jackson in Washington, thanks. Iran launches multiple missile attacks coming up. Who is being targeted, and what does it signal? In Mauritius, a cyclone drenched the island nation with torrential rain and caused flash floods. Supermarkets were swamped and many schools closed. Hospitals were only able to keep their emergency departments open. The same storm system swept through the French island of Reunion on Monday, where people were warned to shelter at home. The cyclone is being blamed for at least 2 deaths. Tensions in the Middle East have been further inflamed by a series of attacks launched by Iran. Iran says its missiles and drones hit southwest Pakistan and what it claims is the base of a militant group opposed to Tehran. And overnight, at least 8 Iranian ballistic missiles hit Erbil, the capital of Iraq's Kurdistan region. As well, Iranian missiles hit targets in northern Syria. Iran has said it wants to avoid a larger regional conflict, but as Redmond Shannon reports, that's exactly what it appears to be stoking.
Rockets fired from Iran and into Iraq. Not something entirely new, but it is another step of escalation in the Middle East, increasingly focused around Iran. The ballistic missiles killed at least 4 people, including prominent businessman Peshwa Dizai and his baby daughter. Tehran says the targeted building in the Iraqi Kurdish city of Erbil was an Israeli spy base. An Israeli government official refused to comment on those claims.
So I'm not going to speculate on reports coming from beyond our borders.
The Kurdish region's leader refuted Iran's claims.
All of the allegations that they have made are baseless. Well, what's surprising, we are not a part of this conflict. We don't know why Iran is retaliating against civilians of Kurdistan.
Iran says the strikes were in retaliation for a suspected Israeli strike that killed a senior commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard in Syria last month. On Monday, Iran also hit what it says were Islamic State targets inside Syria. Apparent revenge for this month's Islamic State suicide bombings at the anniversary memorial of Revolutionary Guard General Qasem Soleimani. Those attacks in southern Iran killed at least 94 people. And on Tuesday, Iranian state media said Tehran struck 2 bases of an anti-Iranian militant group inside neighbouring Pakistan. Iran funds Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, both of which want to eliminate the State of Israel. Tehran also sends arms to Houthi rebels in Yemen. They are currently attacking merchant ships in the Red Sea in response to Israel's war in Gaza. The US Navy said Tuesday it intercepted an arms shipment coming from Iran. This week, Iran's foreign minister criticized US support for Israel, telling Washington war is not the solution. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Davos speaking to world leaders, trying to ensure his country's long war with Russia is not forgotten. In his speech, he called for peace, and unlike last year, he did not directly appeal for more weapons. Instead, he warned world leaders Russian President Vladimir Putin intends to expand beyond Ukraine.
If anyone thinks this is only about us, this is only about Ukraine, they are fundamentally mistaken.
Zelensky also pressed leaders to help rebuild his war-torn country. He thanked allies for stricter sanctions on Russia, but urged leaders to limit workarounds for imports of banned Western products. Zelensky's speech comes at a difficult time on the battlefield. Ukraine's counter-offensive last year was largely unsuccessful, and Western donor fatigue has set in. National security concerns ahead. What could stop Canadian researchers from receiving federal funding? The federal government has named more than 100 foreign research institutions it claims may pose a threat to national security. It includes Chinese, Iranian, and Russian organizations which are believed to have ties to military, national defense, or state security entities in their respective countries. David Aiken breaks down the list, what it means for Canadian researchers, and how it's being received. David.
Well, Donna, here's the list of the named research organizations. It's 11 pages long, 108 foreign institutions, 6 from Russia, 12 from Iran, and 85 from China. Among the institutions banned from partnering with Canadian researchers using federal funding, the Beijing Computing Science Research Center, the Nanjing Army Command College, and China's Space Engineering University.
This is a major step forward for the government and for Canadian research.
We know that, in fact, Canada has been victim in the past of theft by Chinese entities of Canadian technology. And so I think this will help to clarify the rules of the game.
Now, any Canadian researcher applying for some of the billions of dollars available every year in federal research grants can no longer partner or have any formal connection with those banned institutions or their employees.
I'm glad to see that now researchers are paying more attention to what is going on.
Internal documents obtained by the Canadian press indicated that the government crafted the new rules in a way to avoid stigmatizing Chinese Canadians and Chinese foreign students.
Oh, I think there will actually be less ability to stigmatize because there's more clarity now.
Federal officials say this new policy will affect only a small amount of the research in Canada, but it is one of the first federal initiatives to specifically target China, Russia, and Iran, the 3 countries which will almost certainly be at the heart of the hearings to be held by the public inquiry into foreign interference when it begins its work in 2 weeks. Donna.
All right, David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Passionate acceptance speech next. How a Canadian chef stole the show at the Emmys. Elton John has reached new heights. He is now an EGOT. That means he's won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony Award. The legendary musician won an Emmy last night for his Farewell from Dodger Stadium concert, his final North American show. Comedian Ali Wong made Emmy history last night. She is the first woman of Asian descent to win for a lead role, Best Actress in a Limited Series for her role in Beef. And Quinta Brunson is the first Black woman to win Best Comedic Actress in more than 40 years. She won for her performance on Abbott Elementary. The Bear also had a big night, winning 6 Emmys, including Outstanding Comedy Series. Shot in Chicago, it's about the challenges of running a restaurant. Canadian Matty Matheson knows all about that. He's one of the actors and a co-producer. He's also a real chef who runs several restaurants in Ontario. And his acceptance speech last night was wild. Mike Drolet reports.
For the big awards, the star or show creator usually accepts the hardware, not the quirky cast member wearing sandals, who grabbed the Emmy and the kiss of the night. But that's Toronto chef Matty Matheson for you.
Swear to God, I'm a good chef. You would never know because I'm a sociopath.
Matheson, it seems, is every bit the hilarious oddball in everything he does. But he never comes across as anything but genuine. He may provide the bear with some of its lighter moments.
I dare.
You know what, actually? I dare you.
I dare right now.
Dare you. Call Mom. I dare you. Call Mom.
Mom.
I'm going to call Mom. Call Mom. See what happens.
Mom.
She can't hear you.
But as a real chef, he also consults on the show to give it authenticity. Matheson hasn't hid his past troubles. He overcame addiction and a heart attack to build a series of successful restaurants. And his partner at Maker Pizza in Toronto says what he brought to the bear is what he took from his life.
There's like a very weird science to running a restaurant, and they've depicted that like it's pretty much bang on.
It can be hard sometimes to distinguish fiction from reality.
I got hearth.
But isn't that the chef-actor recipe for success? Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. We leave you with another tribute to food. When Edmonton was in a deep, deep freeze. How cold was it? Well, this egg froze as it hit the frying pan, and this bowl of ramen would need a spell in the microwave before it warmed your soul. Winter. Might as well embrace it and get creative. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.